During the Middle Ages, the main population centers, the towns and cities with their surrounding territory, specifically in the central Mediterranean, were known as communes. Many of them trace their origins back to ancient Rome and Greece, if not further, and all of the medieval communes are the same towns and cities to this day. In this video, we will cover in very general terms the early to 15th century history of the communes of the East Adriatic. That is to say, Istria, the Bay of Kvarner, the East Adriatic Islands, the coastline of the former Roman province of Dalmatia, that is to say, the coastal area of modern-day Croatia. While each commune was an individual entity with its own territory, its own economy, its own laws and administration, traditions, patron saints, their own history, and their own particularities, all the communes were similar in many ways. They had a similar historical background, the same factors and actors affected them. Thus, they can be treated as a collective when talked about in very general terms, while for a far more detailed history, the communes need to be looked at individually. The communes formed out of the collapse of the Roman Empire. They were either existing settlements and towns or were founded by Roman inhabitants fleeing the collapsing cities to more secure locations, like bays, islands, and peninsulas, or some pre-existing structures. The communal governing structure developed out of ancient Roman traditions. At the start of the Middle Ages, they were governed by councils of citizens, great and small. A key part was also played by the communal bishop and the church, which was the only institution that could provide administrative and public services. The church also provided an official connection to the outside world, specifically to Rome and Constantinople, which had the ability to provide some form of assistance to the communes. Economically, the communes relied greatly on trade, each specialized in trading certain goods, but the most valuable commodity was salt. Natural factors also benefited the development of trade in the area, as the sea current made sailing easier northwards along the East Adriatic coast, and the many islands and bays provided security from harsh weather, but it also made the region perfect for piracy. The arrival of the Slavic tribes brought change to the area. New societal and geopolitical structures took shape. The Slavic and the so-called Roman population began to influence and interact with each other, talk, trade, and intermix. After the quick rise and decline of the Carolingian Empire, from one of its Slavic vassals emerged the Principality and later Kingdom of Croatia. Everything that was under control of the Croatian monarch was Croatia, everything that was under control of the communes was Dalmatia, and officially under the authority of the Roman Emperor in Constantinople. Through fostering good relations with the Eastern Emperor, the Croatian monarchs attained the right to collect taxes from the Dalmatian communes in return for protecting them. This connected the communes of Dalmatia with the Kingdom of Croatia, made them depend on each other, and by the beginning of the 11th century, the communal patricians were marrying Croatian nobility and even into the Croatian royal family. The Croatian royal title would also become King of Dalmatia and Croatia. When the Croatian kingdom fell into instability and civil war, another emerging Adriatic power, the Republic of Venice, began its centuries-long effort to attain dominance over the East Adriatic islands and coastline. This back-and-forth struggle only intensified after the unification of Croatia and Hungary, as royal authority and army were now further away, so the struggle on the coastline became one of the Croatian nobility against the Venetian merchants, with the communes struggling to assert their autonomy against both. This conflict had few great events and disasters, but the destructive sackings of Beograd on the Sea and Zadar still ring through history. Most of the time it was a far less destructive matter. For example, things would go something like this. Let's say a Croatian noble would come up with his army and demand that the communal council declare him their prince, which they would do. Then let's say a Venetian fleet would swoop in and the council would accept a new Venetian administrator and swear their loyalty to Venice. Then perhaps the communal populace would revolt, kick out the Venetian administrator and garrison, and appoint their own rector or potentate, while still proclaiming loyalty to either king or doge to spare themselves more problems. Rarely would the king of Hungary, Dalmatia, and Croatia actually come down to assert his own authority. There was one interesting phenomenon that occurred in some of the communes, where in cases where they could choose their own potentate, they shifted from choosing one of their own to choosing an outsider, a foreigner, usually from Italy. This was done in order to make sure that the person running the city was not part of any squabbling faction. As mentioned before, at the start of the Middle Ages, the decision-making in the communes was conducted by councils formed out of the great and small citizens of the commune. But as their history went on, the group of decision-makers narrowed to a few rich noble patrician families on the communal council, almost completely excluding the small citizens. By the 13th and 14th century, almost all the communes across the Mediterranean, not just in Dalmatia, began to close the doors of the patrician councils, not letting any new rich upstarts and parvenus join them. They also restricted who could call themselves a citizen of the commune, with all the associated rights, and who was just a lowly inhabitant. Only in cases of great misfortune, when the commune was in need of money, would the councils open up again and accept new members, or when an outside power decided to interfere. The communes were centers of population, of commerce, of culture. Their mercantile records, their legal documents, their law books and statutes, the literary works and private written words of their inhabitants, the medieval chronicles, some of the oldest surviving documents in Croatian history were written and preserved in the communes. Again, for more specifics, we need to look at the histories of the individual communes. The East Adriatic entered into a new era in the 14th and 15th century that saw the end of the medieval age of constant fluctuations of authority. After the sale of Dalmatia in 1409 and the Venetian conquest of 1420s, the East Adriatic became divided between the remaining coastal and island possessions of the Croatian nobility, a small coastline and the Istrian interior under control of the Habsburg dynasty, while the serene Republic of Venice controlled the rest. The Istrian coast, almost all of the islands, almost the entirety of the Dalmatian coastline, and held firm control over every Dalmatian commune. Except one, which managed to maintain its beautiful, dear, and sweet liberty.